to get started. Hopefully you guys managed to get some food and you're feeling refreshed and energetic. So we're going to start our second session today, which is on climate. And I'm going to stop talking now and give it to our very capable presenters.
Okay, hi guys. We're going to talk about the climate survey, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. But first, I'm Michelle. I'm from McLean, and this is Katie. And she's from TMCC. And so the climate survey is basically a survey we've been taking for about 5 years now on computers, kids in grades 5 through 9 and 11. And there are two different types of surveys. So if your ID ends in an even number, you take the climate survey, which is just about your relationships with your school and your peers and how you feel about yourself. And if your ID ends in an odd number, you take the safety survey, which is just about how safe you feel at school and if you're engaging in risk-taking with peers. And so this pie chart pretty much shows you the 4 different topics that the climate survey covers. So for example, supportive relationships with adults, that one just asks you about how engaged your adults are at your school and if you feel like they're supportive of your education. And Washoe County picked these specific questions because they felt like positive results for these questions meant higher success for students in their education. So if you look at the next graph, there's a lot of topics down here, but it's just basically showing you how students responded to this. So if they agreed or strongly agreed with these questions. So for example, adult caring, about 86% of elementary students agreed or strongly agreed that adults cared at their school. And so it kind of gives you an idea based on each level of school. So I just wanted to ask you guys, what kind of major patterns are you seeing here?
Level of caring, I don't know, the perception of how adults treat it obviously goes down, but that should probably just come with the level of pushback you want to give.
I mean, there's a lot going on. There's also academic engagement. So it's not just adults, but you can keep in mind it's all about a lot of different things. So what do you guys think we can do to help this bring up the green mark? Because you can see it's pretty low down there and kind of just decreases.
What does that mean academically engaged? Am I academically engaged? Do I agree with that?
Yeah, so those questions are all about whether students feel like their classes are interesting or not, or if they're really bored as they're going through their classes throughout the day. So it's students' perception about basically how boring school is or how interesting it is.
Okay.
So what is it about high school that's different than elementary school that might affect
The
this?
attitude of the kids, I think. As you get older, your attitude's worse.
Yeah.
Also, you're doing more fun stuff in elementary school.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you're in high school, you can't color anymore, take naps, stuff. But in elementary school, that's what they're doing, and that's super fun.
Yeah.
So I think that could be skewing the data a little bit.
You don't dread going to school when you're 8.
You know,
Why would I dread
that.
going to school when I'm 8? But you just don't. I mean, when you go into high school, you've been going to school for 11 years. And so you're well, why am I doing this now? Because now you have the ability to think about that kind of thing. So I don't find these numbers shocking.
I kind of agree with them. In my opinion, the green bars, they're really not that low. I think 80% is a pretty high number, and 70% as well. And then for academic engagement, if you ask students if their classes are boring, they're going to say yes, because for obvious reasons. So I think everything can be explained, and
I also think that if when you're in elementary school, you're doing all this fun stuff, and then in high school you have to take required courses. But high school is also when personal interests start to develop. So if you're not interested in the class that you're in, then you're gonna say that you're bored in that class. And that's like when you switch to college and you're able to pick your classes and like major the part that you're interested in, then that's when like engagement kind of comes back. And high school is like the transition time where you just kind of have to take all the classes that you have to take. It's just like how it is.
I think that's like the purpose behind the school. Like in elementary school, the purpose is just to give them the basis, teach them, the fundamentals so that they can go on to middle school and high school. But that's all they're doing. They're just teaching, basics. You have to be able to do basic math and basic English and grammar and all of that, and have a general idea of our nation's history, and just kind of like, baby steps. And then I think it goes down more middle and high school just because the purpose is preparing you for higher level thinking. Like especially in high school, because the purpose in high school is so that you can succeed in college. And so it kind of just goes back to like your interests and stuff. Like you have to be able to do these higher level thinking questions and well-written essays and things like that, where it's really is taking these basic ideas that we learned way back in elementary school, and they're just a ton more complicated. So I think it's just the more rigorous curriculum that if you're not interested in the class, like you said, you're not going to be interested in doing that with that topic.
Yeah.
And I think it also, like, I took this survey like 2 days ago, and I think it also has to do with, in high school, your classes are more rigorous and like harder, and you have a harder time getting good grades. And so, like, when I took the test, I was in a class that I was having a super hard time in my English class, and it made me want to be like, no, I hate this class, like, engagement 0. Like,
What do you think we can do to like raise the bar then for engagement?
I would probably say learning through interest. Because at our school, at Innovations High School, what we have is basically learning through interest. So say if you want to do a specific career, you learn about it every Wednesday. If you earn it, which is the golden ticket, which is your grades and attendance, you get to go out on an internship, see how you would like it, and basically you just, if you want to be a nurse, you go do the math, specific math that you want to learn through, things like that.
I don't think that's like how our system, like our education system in this country is set up to like work that. Like in high school, you have to learn how to do these basic things.
But what we're saying is what we should do.
Right.
Not what is happening right now, it's what we should do.
I know that. But like you have to develop that base in order to be versatile in what you do later. So college, that's what college is for. So, but it's like about when you get to high school, like that's when stuff starts mattering. And so when people realize a couple of years in or something that like that their school matters, like, and it's mattered for the last 2 years, like they're like, whoa, like now I'm just like, this is boring and I don't want to do it anymore. But so there has to be I think there has to be a different way to do it where you still develop that base so that you can go on to college and pursue your interests. Like, I know you do, and you can do internships in high school, but it can be a lot more developed, like college, after college, pre-job. But high school, you have to develop your well-rounded academic base.
Maya, you were going to say something?
Just really quick, it may also affect the engagement with the students what they're doing outside school, such as sports, music, CTSOs, jobs, shadowing, whatever you may do. It can tire out the student so much that they are not engaging in there, then it may just be a circle where the teachers get mad and then they get more stressed and they do more stuff to try to make it up.
So what do you think we could do to fix that kind of?
Just make the teachers understand that we have other stuff that we may have to put first. Especially if you're an athlete. If you're an athlete, you do your sport first. Especially if you're a musician and you care more about that than the class.
Yeah. What if we had more like options? Because I don't know about the rest of the schools, obviously I can't speak for everyone, but I know at least at Damani, basically after your freshman year, there's no in-between. You have a normal level class, regular, no honors, no anything, and then you have AP. We have barely any honors classes, like as an option. And I think as far as like balancing because kids get really stressed out, and that's when they start to hate schools when they're not doing well. And so kids, and in high school especially, is all about, being involved. We're all thinking about organizations, I want to be involved in sports and clubs and student leadership and as many things as I can. But that all takes time away from homework and studying, which is going to affect your grades. So I think, and so then you have student athletes or student body VP or whatever, people involved in other things that either, they have the choice between a normal level class, which a lot of them are going to be bored in, or not like the class, not like the level, not feel challenged at all, and just kind of sit there and do nothing and not, not learn anything, which is nice every once in a while, but if your whole schedule is like that, you're not going to like it. Or you have AP, where then you're taking, AP classes, and then it's a college level class in high school, and just one in itself is stressful, let alone having your whole schedule, or even just 2 or 3. And so I think we had another option, like an honors class, where you can still have the rigorous learning without as much workload as the AP class. At least for me, I know I would enjoy school a lot more.
A lot of it can be due to stress levels, because after changing Boston County School District, I don't think you can just change this, you need to change the entire educational system. Because I know a lot of teachers ask us, they're like, why are you worried so much about your grades? Why aren't you worried about learning the content? It's colleges don't see if I learn the content, colleges see if I got A's or B's. And so I think we can talk as much as we want about we should obviously try and change Washington County School District for the better, but I also think that just there's a problem with the entire educational system. That's just kind of how it is right now.
So I go here, and I have 4 college classes and 3 high school classes, and I'm not bored in my college classes. They have so much variety, and you can choose exactly what you want to do, and it's just if you could do that in normal high schools, I think everyone would be more happy with what they're doing. I know it might not be possible, but it should be considered.
Also, when we get to choose our classes, we can choose anywhere from having 4 classes total to having 9 classes total. And the point is we get to choose our workload, and we get to choose what interests us, and we get to work hard if we want to work hard instead of having to do things we don't want to do. But we also still have to do core high school classes, so we get our core classes plus we get to do what we're interested in. Which would be cool areas.
Well, even in college, people have to take core classes. I agree with what he said about how high school is a time where we have to be well-rounded. We have to get core because if kids are not going to go to college, then and they had just focused on one subject, they're not going to be well-rounded as they try to go into careers and stuff.
You have to. You can't focus on one thing in high school because people change their interests. And if you focus on one thing in this time where you have the capacity and the resources to try and gain a base, then you're setting yourself up for either monotony or just failure.
Take this one last comment here, and then we'll move to the next section. I'm just kidding. So polite.
I think that it's also probably it's biased in my opinion, to some extent, because it depends on the teachers. We all have the same, we can all have the same class, but it depends oh, I don't like this teacher, so I don't care about that class because I don't like the teacher. It may not necessarily be the subject, it may be the teacher or the environment they're in, the people around them who they hang out with, oh, my friends don't care, so I don't care, I'll just talk to them. It might not necessarily be the classes in general. It could be your environment.
So all classes should be interesting.
Yeah.
Good point.
Okay, so I'm going to toss it over to Katie. She's going to talk a little bit about the safety survey. So just like the climate survey, the safety survey has 4 different sections that all of the questions are put into. And the safety survey basically just focuses on how safe kids feel at school and risk-taking behaviors that students take. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to read over this because there's a lot there. So, is there anything that surprises you about the data?
I skip it message, but also like with this kind of data, I don't know how much as teachers that you can really trust it, because I don't know, not that I'm doing any of this stuff, but if I was, I don't know if I would click yes. If I had done cocaine, I don't think I'd be yeah, I just did cocaine.
Of course you wouldn't do that. Someone else.
That's really the most reliable way to measure how.
So do you guys think that these questions are answered anonymously, or do you guys think that the kids think that these are anonymous?
I mean, they know that it's
Well, they might be
anonymous,
on-
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you think that they might think oh, they might be able to track that I'm doing
It's like
this?
I think it's more self-denial. They're like, oh no, I didn't do that.
I've watched people sit there and just fill out bubbles just because. I've seen that happen at multiple occasions, where they just fill them out just to fill them out.
Going on what Mackenzie just said, some students may not take it seriously and say, sure, I smoked a cigarette before. They don't know it's actually me, kind of thing. So, or it could be also peer pressure where it's like, hey, make sure you use cocaine just to mess with them. So I don't think this is really reliable.
So do you
But
guys,
I think even if unreliable, you can still see that skipping class is the hugest.
That's not a big crime.
Yeah, they're skipping class, whatever.
Also that alcohol is just a more socially acceptable form of
But
yeah, I mean, people aren't as afraid to say I drink alcohol.
so do you guys think that these numbers are actually supposed to be higher or lower than what's on here?
Yeah.
I would say that 75% of the kids at my school have skipped class once in the last 30 days. And well, it depends what you mean by skip class. Most of the times I see it's oh, I didn't do my homework, I'm gonna go take a street pass and go home and then I'll come back. But I think that in proportion, these are all in order of, anyway, those are pretty well, more people skip class than use methamphetamines. But I think this way, percentage-wise, they're way higher.
Just across the board.
Yeah. I think they're probably pretty accurate, in relation to each other, but in total, I don't think
Yeah.
that's a very accurate description of how many people have had a drink of alcohol.
But it's also in the past 30 days, so that might also change things, what time of the year it is, because we take this in the spring, so do you think that might change? The survey.
I think kind of though it would go up in skipping classes and stuff, but as we get further down the chart or graph, I think it would go up higher proportionally, just because I know that a lot of people probably who skip class felt like they said more okay about saying they skipped class, but people who used methamphetamines probably didn't feel good about that. So if it were completely anonymous and completely true, I think the lower, worse aggressions would go up more than the not so bad aggression.
I think you have to, I know these surveys, I just took one, I think last week. So they're really specific and they detail exactly what it is that you're answering. But I think still, like, some kids, like skipping class, for example, you know, they're like, oh, well, I mean, I showed up to class on time, I just took a bathroom pass and then left. Or, you know, I was at school, I just kind of stayed in the library and did that assignment that it was due. So I think, you know, and they want to work for anything too, like, oh, well, I mean, I might have tried my friend's drugs or whatever, but it's not like I really was smoking it. So, kids will justify what they want to justify.
Yeah.
So,
Also, I think a lot of kids will like, for the skipping class, will like stay home sick, and that's still like skipping class. Like, you're not actually sick, like you're fine. I like see you at Starbucks like right after school. But I think that's like, that would also increase it a lot.
Yeah. Do you think that there's anything that students could do to improve this data, or maybe the administrators?
I think the teachers know that kids skip class. Like my English teacher, there was an essay due. She's like, oh, why are so many kids gone? Oh, because there's an essay due. Like, they know. But I don't think there's really anything they can do about it, TBH.
Like the skipping class, you could probably most likely like reduce the percentage, like maybe enforce like, more, like be stricter on your students. But other than that, I feel like the smoking, the drinking, all that, that's on the students. That doesn't have anything really to do with the administrators, because it's not like they're there outside of school watching them. It's whatever they do outside of school, that's what they do, that's their choice. It's not like we can really like, no, stop, don't do that. We can say that, we can like tell them and show them like why it's bad, but in the end they're really gonna do what they want to do. Because like, for example, you're in high school, you have parties, you guys, like for some reason they get like alcohol, we all know that. So it's their choice, not really something that we can really do, in my opinion, like as far as smoking, drinking. Like if it's in school, yes, we can like put discipline on them, but if it's outside of school, then we have no choice. Like it's their choice. We have no really like impact on that.
There's just a bunch of like just cultural models, just like say like, oh, I mean, they obviously do this kind of drug or whatever, so and they're successful, so I'm gonna do it too. It obviously works.
Students can make a much bigger impact on whether or not other students go to school than teachers can. Because if your teacher's like, hey, you gotta come to school, you're like, well, you're a teacher. Like, obviously you think I need to come to school. But if you're like, one of your friends keeps going to school, it's really easy for you to be like, hey, like you gotta come to school, and they're probably more willing to listen to you than they are to an adult with like authoritative power.
Yeah. Do you think that at your school any of these issues are like a huge problem, or skipping class?
Not personally, not at this school.
Why do you say that?
Well, we have a close relationship, like a close bond with all our teachers and everything. So everyone has like this respect thing. And we keep our school a neutral zone. So no gangs, no drugs, no nothing on campus. I mean, yeah, we let them smoke cigarettes, but that's out by a tree, you know, and everyone stays together. Nobody's fighting, nobody's cussing, yelling at each other. No, everyone's pretty laid back. And I mean, occasionally you'll get someone who comes in smelling of things. But you know, they take care of it. You know, they'll pull them aside like, yo, you smell, so we're gonna send you home. Like, you can't come to school smelling like that. And that's a respect thing. You know, they draw a line and they're like, all right, I'll go home. I'm not gonna come like to school like this tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, so this graph is just showing how safe kids feel at school based on being in high school, middle school, or elementary school. What do you guys think it means to feel safe at school?
Do you want to come to school?
No, I don't think it's. I think it's
You're not gonna like get like
like yeah, like you're not gonna
verbally or physically abused like while you're at school.
I think it's not having to worry about watching your back every time you get to school, like going through the doors, making sure nobody wants to hit you or, argue with you, or something like that.
I think, like, we have all these different definitions, and I think that's a fault in the test, personally. Like, for me, it'd be like, if you don't feel safe at school, you don't want to go to school. Not that you're, because your classes are boring, but because you're afraid something could happen.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, so like, it's great to have, I think it's really tough to get a accurate representation of how people feel, and that's the tough part about making change where there really needs to be change. So,
What do you think would like change the perception of somebody choosing strongly agree over agree?
It doesn't really mean anything, but does everyone remember when everyone thought the world was going to end? That was on a school day. And I went to school that day because my mom made me. But there was like 5 students in all of my class. 30. So I just wanted to bring that up because that seems like it matters.
Like what she said, if you don't feel like you're going to be safe at school, because that day there were, what was it, like threats of bombings or something?
Yeah.
And I didn't go to school, but but if you don't feel like you're going to be safe, then you're not going to show up. And that was my parents' choice. Like, I think your school's going to get bombed, stay home. But
My mom would stay home.
The difference between the strongly agree and agree, I didn't find much difference, and I didn't understand really why there were 2 different options. I just kept saying agree because, like,
I really under, like, what's this supposed to be the difference? Because, like, we've been taking these tests since, like I moved here in 7th grade, and that's what I've been taking these tests, like, every year since 7th grade.
You
and
can
I
either
never
agree or
understood
you
why
can
there's a
disagree,
strongly
like-
there should
agree
just
and
be
an
agree and disagree.
Or like a
Like maybe, maybe not.
Like a, and so like a disagree.
I don't know.
And like agree. I don't know why there's like 5 different options.
it makes it really, it makes
It's
it
like
Either yes or no.
it's really ambiguous.
Sorry. So basically, I was just gonna say I kind of like the whole like strongly disagree versus disagree thing because like I am an agree and not a strongly agree because like I go here and we have a public library and we have we're a community college, aka anyone can come here. Like any kind of jobs, like anyone can be here. So like I feel safe, but at the same time, I don't like to walk out to my car alone. So it's like right there, and also like. For the strongly disagree, it could be like kids actually are afraid to come to school because they're afraid of physically being beaten by other children versus a disagree where it's like I'm being mildly bullied. I think it's pretty important that there are so many options because someone else's might be someone else's hell. Like it's kind of good to have those options.
Depends on the question.
yeah.
I think it depends on the question. If you have like obviously like a question about being bullied, like you need cat levels.
Yeah, they
Be like a number line or something. Like,
On a scale of like 1 to 10.
like
How bad?
But then like other questions don't need like all those just kind of confuse you. Like, are you doing drugs is like a yes or no question. You can't like kind of do drugs. Like there needs to be. I think that the test just needs to get like a little more clarified. I think it's a little too broad that to like accurately like chart everything that's going on in schools. You can't have a broad question because there's like so many different kinds of people and different kinds of things going on in every school.
So we are actually out of time for this session. So thank you guys for all your feedback. And now you're going to move to your 3rd session. And just so you guys know, after your 3rd session, you'll stay in that room, and administrators will kind of work with the students to plan action steps.